Page 1 of 103. Success. 1A Praxis, Social Studies, 5004, Form 1, 2, and 3. Study Guide Exam with 550 questions and correct verified solutions just released. This year, Praxis Social Studies, 5004, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. Question: the relative scarcity of arable land in China led to which of the following patterns in Chinese social life? Correct answer: heavy check mark, early development of intensive agricultural cultivation techniques. Question: which of the following is an effect of the Gulf Stream? Correct answer: the climate of Western Europe is significantly warmer and milder than it otherwise would be. Question: which of the following is a responsibility of a citizen of the United States? Correct answer: heavy check mark, volunteering in a community. Question: the Russian people's interest in acquiring and wearing American blue jeans is an example of? Correct answer: heavy check mark, cultural diffusion. Question: which of the following statements best describes gender role? Correct answer: heavy check mark, the set of behaviors society considers appropriate for each sex group. 1/4. Page 2 of 103. Success. 2. Question: during the era of classical civilizations, which of the following primarily drove interaction between the Roman and Han empires? Correct answer: heavy check mark, trade in luxury goods. Question: which of the following is an important provision of the Treaty of Versailles, signed at the end of the First World War? Correct answer: heavy check mark, Germany had to take responsibility for Allied war losses by accepting a war guilt clause. Question: which of the following Native American cultures is known for its complex temples and pyramids and its cultivation of maize? Correct answer: heavy check mark, Aztec. Question: which colony had the highest proportion of German settlers during the colonial period? Correct answer: heavy check mark, Pennsylvania. Question: the correspondence between which of the following couples, in which the wife urged her husband, remember the ladies, is viewed by historians as an early illustration of the interest and activism of women in national policy? Correct answer: heavy check mark, John and Abigail Adams. Question: which of the following issues did the 3/5 Compromise at the Constitutional Convention of 1787 resolve? Correct answer: heavy check mark, how to account for slaves for both the 2/4. Page 3 of 103. Success. 3 purposes of representation of states in the House of Representatives and of taxation of states by the national government. Question: what did the United States Supreme Court conclude in its 1857 ruling on the Dred Scott case? Correct answer: slaves had no legal right to sue for their freedom. Question: in 1920, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution was passed in order to, correct answer: heavy check mark, guarantee women the right to vote. Question: the Truman Doctrine justified which of the following United States policies? Correct answer: heavy check mark, aiding Greece and Turkey after the Second World War. Question: which of the following contributed to a decline in the prices of farm goods in the late 19th century United States? Correct answer: heavy check mark, overproduction of agricultural products. Question: which of the following exemplifies the Constitution's federalist structure? Correct answer: heavy check mark, the 10th Amendment's division of power between national and state governments. Question: which of the following statements is consistent with the ideas of Thomas Hobbes and helped to influence the writing of the United States Constitution? Correct. 3/4. Page 4 of 103. Success. 4 answer: heavy check mark, no order exists in a state of nature, and therefore people need to surrender some of their power and form a government to create order. Question: which of the following is required for an individual to cast a ballot in any federal Election in the United States? Correct answer, heavy check mark, voter registration. Question: which of the following is true of the effect of high tariffs on an economy in the long run? Correct answer, heavy check mark, they benefit some groups at the expense of others. Question: in which of the following types of economies do the government and central planners play the largest part in deciding how resources are used and distributed to the people? Correct answer, heavy check mark, command. Question: which resource would be most useful to a researcher who is studying the significance of the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Strait of Gibraltar? Correct answer, heavy check mark, a map of the countries located between the North Atlantic and the Arabian Sea. Question: which of the following is the most effective method for a farmer to use to minimize the effects of a drought? Correct answer, heavy check mark, using drip irrigation. Question: which of the following was a major effect of the New Deal in the United States? Correct answer, heavy check mark, increased federal government spending after the Great Depression, powered by TCPDF, www.tcpdf.org/4.